Hello everyone, welcome to Into Sports. I'm your host Evan, and today we have a very exciting episode because we're going to be doing our power rankings for the NFL. I'm going to be talking about my top 10 teams after week 6, going into week 7, and let's kick it off by starting with the Green Bay Packers at number 10. Now, we all know what the secret to success is for Green Bay. It's that one man, Aaron Rodgers. The offense is ranked 4th, and the defense surprisingly ranked 7th. Aaron Jones, let's talk about him, 5.9 yards per carry. Yet Mike McCarthy refuses to use him. I mean, Jamal Williams, Ty Montgomery, they're almost as involved as Aaron Jones. It's really a three-way timeshare. And Aaron Jones, in my opinion, he deserves to get the ball 15 to 20 times a game. He's so efficient, and on tape, he's a really good running back. I really do believe that. Now, Green Bay, another thing that may surprise you, they do have the 3rd best offensive line. We all talk about Rodgers, the injuries to the knee, how they need to protect him. I mean, they've been doing it well. Third best offensive line according to Pro Football Focus. So, Green Bay, they do have a record of 3-2-1. They tied against the Minnesota Vikings with a controversial Clay Matthews roughing the passer call. We've seen 3 of those this year, but not any in the last few weeks. He's really cleaned it up, and the defenders are really adjusting to the rule. They know what's going to happen when they pound the quarterback into the ground, when they keep that body weight, the momentum, like when they're tackling, when they keep that into the ground. They know that they're going to be flagged for 15 yards, and they know the impact that has on their team. You get a stop on 3rd down, you get one of those calls, completely can ruin a drive, ruin a game, ruin a season. Just from a little call like that. And the defenders have been doing a nice job of cleaning it up. So now let's move down to number 9, where we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 3-2-1. 6th best offense, but the 21st best defense. And I think they should be a little bit worse. They just can't stop anyone. Through the air, they've just given up yards and yards and yards. And that's the real kryptonite to this team. They do have the 7th best offensive line. And James Conner, with the absence of Le'Veon Bell, he's been great. He has the 5th most rushing yards in the league. 7th best offensive line. He's running behind. Now, this is the bye week for them. And there was all these talks that Lev Bell, he'll return in the bye week. That's when he'll report. But I've heard for Adam Schefter, he's not expected to show up this week. But next week, the week that they play the Cleveland Browns, that is likely when he returns. But I don't think he'll be that Lev Bell that gets 90% of the snaps. I think we could see that go down to 65%. Because I think James Conner will be involved. He'll be involved heavily. But definitely he'll get a cut in his utilization when Lev Bell returns. Because, Lev Bell, he's still top 5 running back in this league. So he absolutely deserves to get some time, get some snaps, get some touches for this Pittsburgh Steelers football club. And another key thing for them, the wide receivers, Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown. I said Juju first because he has more receiving yards on the year. Bit of a shocker. Antonio Brown, we all know, he's really the best receiver in football. That is what I believe personally. You could say Odell, you could say Julio, but I really don't think they rival Antonio Brown. But Juju has been amazing just in his 2nd year. I think a few years down the line, he could be in the race for the best wide receiver in the league. I think that's really how good he is. He's getting the targets. He's great after the catch. He can really do it all at the wide receiver position. Let's go to number 8. The Ravens. They're the Steelers' rival. They're 4-2. They have the number 1 defense in the NFL per Pro Football Focus. And surprisingly, the 9th best offense. They added John Brown, Willie Snead, Michael Crabtree. Completely revamped that wide receiving core. And it's paid off for them and Flacco. Now, Flacco, he has a much better year. And the thing with Flacco is that when his job is in jeopardy, that's when he starts to wake up. That's when he delivers. That's when he actually plays like a good NFL quarterback. And that's been the case so far. He saw them draft Lamar Jackson. They traded up for him. So Flacco knew that he had to perform or he was going to lose his job. Because I live near Baltimore. And I know that all these fans here, they want to see Lamar Jackson play some football. They are eager. Flacco, not necessarily their favorite. So they want to see the change in the quarterback position. But Flacco was definitely on the hot seat coming into this year. And he's performed. I'll just put it straight up. He's performed. The last few years haven't been the best for Joe Flacco. But he showed up. I think it is credit to this new wide receiver core. John Brown has been excellent. He's third in the league for average depth of target. Third longest routes. I'm looking at Deshaun Jackson, who's also up there. He reminds me a lot of Deshaun Jackson. You know, he's going to hit the home run ball probably at least five times a year. 50-yard touchdown. And that's who John Brown is. Crabtree, more of a possession wide receiver. And Willie Snead, out of the slot. Third down when you need him. That's when he wakes up. That's when Flacco finds him. Last week against Tennessee, he was the third down guy. Bailed Flacco out multiple times. And speaking of last week, 11 sacks versus Tennessee. Now I know this offensive line of Tennessee is not very good, the Titans. But still, 11 sacks in 1 week, in one game, that's amazing. On offense, they have moved a little bit towards a committee approach. Alex Collins was the starter going into the year. Kenneth Dixon on the IR. A talented back who's had injuries, had suspensions, and he's really not been able to get on the field. So it's been Alex Collins. Javorius Allen, he's been there too. Stealing a little bit of the goal line touches of the red zone work. And of course the pass catching game, what he does best. And this last week, Gus Edwards, he was involved. So I see a three-way timeshare for Baltimore in the near future. Now let's go to number 7. We have the Philadelphia Eagles, aka the world champs from last year. They won it with a backup quarterback. Carson Wentz has returned. Foles went 1-1 for them as the starter. Didn't really look good. So they brought back Carson Wentz and replaced Foles. They have a 3-3 record on the year, which isn't necessarily great to be on my top 10, but they do come in at number 7 because they have the best pass rush in the league, and they have the second best offensive line. They're winning the battle at the line of scrimmage, and that is key. I know they lost Ajayi, but Wendell Smallwood, Corey Clement, Darren Sproles, when he becomes healthy, they're going to be running it behind this offensive line. We know Smallwood a little bit more of a pass catcher along with Sproles. Clement more of an inside zone runner. Ajayi, it was a torn ACL. He fractured his back the week before, and he played in that game. Then it was just a nightmare season for Jay Ajayi with the injuries. And he is on the IR. He will be out for the season. They're only 18th in offense and 12th in total defense. So you may ask, why are they this high? Carson Wentz, he would have won the MVP last year if he didn't get injured. His return, he's been good. Last week against Minnesota, that is really when I said, Carson Wentz, he's back. The other weeks, he kind of took him a few games to get into the groove, get into the rhythm. But I think he's really back. This defense, on paper, they're really good. They made a few moves in the offseason that really improved them, especially in the on the defensive line. But Jalen Mills, not really going to cut it as your best corner. That's where they give up most of the yards, through the air. Although last week they did a good job against Odell Beckham, limiting to under 50 yards. But the week before, they faced up Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. No one's really found a way to stop them. But the Eagles certainly didn't. So let's go to number... where are we at? Number 6. I got the Minnesota Vikings. They're 3-2-1. And there's some concerns with them. 24th best offensive line. In other words, one of the worst in the league. Everson Griffin has missed next week. He will miss his 5th straight week. And Dalvin Cook can't stay healthy. I mean, hamstring injuries, leg issues. I mean, Dalvin Cook, he was expected, he practiced in full on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, there was a report that he practiced in full. But then, apparently he didn't practice? Very, very confusing. And then today, on Friday, he's been ruled out for the game against the Jets. So I don't think Cook makes a return for a few weeks. I think they just need to rest him up. I think they try to rush him back in practice, and it hasn't worked out well. Even when he's been in there, Cook hasn't been the best. But this offensive line has been atrocious. We've only seen one good game, really, from this Vikings backfield, and that was last week with Latavius Murray. Completely stomped on the Cardinals. But really, who hasn't stomped on the Cardinals? I mean, against the run, the Cardinals are terrible. Like, they can't stop anyone on the ground. Yesterday, they got gashed by Phillip Lindsay and his Broncos team. But, I mean, that was a disgusting game. In fantasy, I happened to go against the Broncos defense. And I was a favorite by 27 points. And now I'm not a favorite anymore. So, thanks, Cardinals. But Adam Thielen, going back to the Vikings, Adam Thielen, he's the first wide receiver in the Super Bowl era to start the season with 6 100-yard receiving games. The first player in the Super Bowl era to do it. All time? That's amazing. I mean, he's a top 5 receiver in the league. And Stephon Diggs, his counterpart, he's amazing too, top 10 receiver. We all know what happened last year in the playoffs with Stephon Diggs. I'm not going to talk about it. I am a Saints fan. So we're not really going to mention that. But Cousins, 71% completion this year. He's been great. 12-3 touchdown interception ratio. The problems haven't been on the offensive end. It's been the defense. I feel like they really miss Everson Griffin at the nose tackle spot. Missing his 5th straight week, like I said earlier. They need him back. They rank 16th in defense. And this is a Mike Zimmer team, remember. Mike Zimmer team. They normally thrive on their defense. That's normally their calling card. But this year, it's been the offense. It's been through the air. The run game hasn't been good. The defense hasn't been good. So, in the playoffs, if they make it there, I don't know if I see them going too far. Especially because Cousins has kind of struggled in big games. You know, when things have been going down, you saw it against the Bills. The Bills, like the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, he was terrible. It didn't get going early. He started bad start, and he just can't come back from that. When things are down for Kirk Cousins, it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And I think that's a flaw to their team. I think the defense will patch himself up. You know, Mike Zimmer, I believe he's a great head coach. I believe that he will fix this defense. Everson Griffin potentially returning later in the year. I think that will be a huge, huge help. And I think the Vikings team, I think they're pretty solid, better than their record has showed so far. Moving to number 5. We have a team that a lot of people are a little bit more high on than me. We have the Kansas City Chiefs. Pat Mahomes, everyone wants to talk about him because they've been scoring 35.8 points per game. Last week, Tyreek Hill, 7 receptions, 142 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Speed kills. I mean, he's a cheetah out there. Mahomes, he leads the league in quarterback rating. He's tossed 18 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions. Like, he's played good defenses too. He's played Jacksonville, and I know he didn't throw for a touchdown, but he ran for one. He had the game completely under control. He showed to me he's looked like a veteran quarterback. He hasn't looked like a guy that's only played 7 games in his career. Now, Chiefs, everyone is excited for them. They're 5-1. They lost to the Patriots in Foxborough by 3. Which, by the way, that's basically a tie. Because Vegas, they give a 3-point cushion to the home team. So, like, let's say you're favored by 3 and you're playing at home. You're basically exactly as good as the other team in a matchup. So, and that game was in Foxborough. Patriots won by 3. So I'm not concerned about that loss. I think they can compete for an AFC championship later down the line. But before we get to that, we have to focus on the fact that they are 32nd in defense. They're just getting demolished through the air. They can't stop anyone. In the offseason, they lost Marcus Peter to the Rams. Eric Berry hasn't played yet. Although the Chiefs are, quote-unquote, confident he will play this year. I do think he will play. And if you can't stop anyone defense, I don't see you as a serious contender for the Super Bowl, for the Vince Lombardi Trophy. That's why I have the Chiefs at 5. Last year, they did start 5-0. This year, they started 5-0. What did they do last year? They got bounced in the first round by the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, look where the Tennessee Titans are right now. They lost to that team. They had a big lead, and Mariota led a comeback against this Chiefs team. So the hot starts, the great Septembers, the great Octobers for the Chiefs team, they've always been there. This is the third time they've been 5-0 under Andy Reid. So I'm not buying too much into this 5-1 record and the 5-0 start. I do think the secondary and the defense will improve from 32nd. I mean, they don't have anywhere negative to go. They can't get worse. But when Eric Berry comes back, I think they will improve a little bit. But improving a little bit still doesn't make them a Super Bowl candidate, in my mind. Because football, there's 3 elements of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. And special teams matters a little bit. No one really talks about it, though. But if you can't play defense, you can't win a championship. I'm sorry. Like having the 32nd best defense, having to score 36, almost 36 points a game to win, I don't see Chiefs as a serious candidate unless they get better. Now they do have some quality wins. They've beat Jacksonville. They've beat San Diego in week 1. They've beat Pittsburgh. Denver lost to Patriots in Foxborough by 3. So they have a good resume. And I do think they are a good team. I do have them at 5th. But they're going to have to clean it up on the defensive end. But offensively, Kareem Hunt, he's been a rock star for them. Just like last year where he led the league in rushing. But Sammy Watkins, 2 for 18 in a game, which your team scores 42 points? And you're the second best wide receiver on the team? And they paid you the big bucks to come in and play? And you're putting up 18 yards in a game where your team scored 42 points against a soft secondary? I don't know what's going on with Sammy Watkins. He hasn't got off to a good start. I thought he was going to do a lot. Mahomes didn't target him in the preseason, so I kind of backed off him. And Mahomes isn't targeting him anymore. It's been Tyreek Hill. It's been Travis Kelce. It's been Kareem Hunt. And Andy Reid, we have to talk about him. Because he's done a much better job with this team, better than last year. Last year, he would just take Kareem Hunt out of games. Kareem Hunt would finish with 4 carries, 5 carries, 6 carries. And he led the league in rushing. And you just don't even try to give him the ball. But this year, 3 games of 18 carries. He's getting the workload. He's getting targets through the passing game. And he's been really good for this team. Chiefs at 5. Getting into a controversial pick, the Chargers at 4-2. I know they lost to the Chiefs. That's what everyone is thinking right now. They lost to the Chiefs in week 1, but I can explain. Now, I did have the Chargers going to the Super Bowl in my before season predictions, and I'm going to stick to it. Because they should have beat the Chiefs. Now, here's why they didn't. I know shoulda, coulda, woulda. We can always reflect on games, how a team could have won the game, how a team could have done this, how they could have done that, how the coach could have done that. But Tyrell Williams dropped 2 touchdown passes wide open in the end zone. Mike Williams dropped quite a few passes. I think Austin Eckler dropped some passes. And I think they outplayed him without Joey Bosa, their best, arguably best defender. because Casey Hayward is there. And last year, he was the number 1 rated corner by Pro Football Focus. And 3 times he shadowed a opposing receiver in 3 games against the Bills, the Browns, and the Raiders. Now I know you're thinking those are bad teams. But he gave up 5 receptions and 38 yards in 3 games. 3 games. Shadowing the opponent's number 1 receiver. Kelvin Benjamin, Antonio Callaway, Amari Cooper. Now I know those guys are doing a good job enough covering themselves. They can't catch the ball. I know. But still, only 38 yards in 3 games against the opposing number 1 wide receiver. Casey Hayward is a superstar on the defensive end. Each team, if you want to have a shot in my book to win the Super Bowl, you got to have a number 1 elite corner. And like I just talked about with the Chiefs, they don't have that. Now, offensively, look at the weapons. Phillip Rivers, he can give the ball to Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler, who's been really efficient, and Gordon, he's been an MVP candidate so far. In years prior with Gordon, the issue wasn't the volume, but it was the efficiency. He just wasn't getting it done. You look at Kamara, what he did last year, that's efficiency. Gordon was the opposite. But this year, he's been so much better on tape. Had so much better numbers. He already has 8 touchdowns in just 6 games. I mean, he's been a superstar. An MVP candidate. Phillip Rivers, also an MVP candidate. But Rivers, he can throw it to Gordon, Eckler. He can throw it to Keenan Allen. And let's talk about Keenan Allen for a minute. Because last year, in the second half of the year, he absolutely exploded. I mean, he was just on record pace. But this year, he's been. I mean, he's still the number 1 receiver for this team. He's averaging 8.5 targets a game. But he's only had 1 touchdown on the year. That's 1/6 of a touchdown per game. He's caught 70% of his passes. And he's had 12 yards of reception, which has gone down about 2 yards from last year, which is fine. But it's the touchdowns. And last year, a little bit more targets. And this week against Tennessee, he'll be shadowed by Malcolm Butler. And you want to know about Malcolm Butler? Everyone thinks he's great. Because he had that big play in the Super Bowl that saved the Patriots. But since 2017, he's allowed the most yards to opposing wide receivers. So he's been the worst cornerback in the NFL since the start of 2017. And that's a 22-game sample size. I'm not pulling 2 games and saying you've been the worst in 2 games, so you're the worst corner. I mean, I don't think he's the worst corner in the league, but he's just been bad. And in in London, not Vegas, but in London, games have typically been lopsided over the last few years. Chargers are favored by 6.5, according to Vegas. I think Chargers win this by 20 or more, and I think Keenan Allen scores at least once, and I think he'll have 120 yards through there. I think this is the game where Keenan Allen blows up and returns to his second half of the year pace from last year. So Keenan Allen, he'll get it together. Tyrell Williams had the 2 touchdowns on 3 receptions last week. He's a deep play guy. Along with Mike Williams, who they drafted early in the draft 2 years ago out of Clemson. I think he's good. He's a big wide receiver, tall, and he's a really good red zone guy. What he does, he catches the touchdowns. You have Keenan Allen, who's more of a possession wide receiver, a little bit more after the catch. They like to run the ball for Keenan Allen. Like at the start of every game, they give Keenan Allen one of these jet sweeps. And I like that they're using him. And I think they should use Tyrell Williams and Mike Williams a little bit more in the offense. But on the defense, Joey Bosa has not played yet. Joey Bosa is one of the best defenders in the NFL. He's a top 4 pass rusher guaranteed in this league. And he hasn't played a snap. And the defense is 13th, according to Pro Football Focus, without Joey Bosa. And Joey Bosa, he has a huge impact on this defense. His brother Nick, I talked about him the other day on the podcast when I was ranking college football teams, withdrew. I'm going to say withdrew from Ohio State from an injury, wants to prepare for the NFL draft. And Joey's injured also. But I think he will come back. I'll give him 5 weeks. He'll come back in 5 weeks. He'll be ready for the playoffs. He'll be good to go. And he will, I think he'll return to form as a top pass rusher in the game. Now, one of my concerns for the Chargers is kind of a weird concern. It's about their home field advantage. Like when Oakland came into town a few weeks back, it was a road game for San Diego. I just call them San Diego. For the Los Angeles Chargers. Because there's just not enough fans of the Chargers. I don't get why. I think they're an excellent team. But I think that can haunt them in the playoffs. Not having a real home field advantage. If you look at a place like Foxborough, Arrowhead, the Superdome, they all have really good home field advantages. And that's key in a playoff game. When, every little point, every little snap matters to win a championship. So if you're still not convinced that the San Diego Chargers are a better team than the Chiefs, you just have to look at the defense. Look at the defense. And that's why I have the Chargers over Chiefs. And Phillip Rivers. You might say Pat Mahomes. Oh, he's just so good. Phillip Rivers is an MVP candidate. Equally as much as Pat Mahomes. Equally as much. But his work has not been talked about nearly as much. But if the MVP was given today, he'd be a top 3 finisher, in my opinion. Top 3 finisher, Pat Mahomes, maybe Jared Goff, Drew Brees, maybe, and Phillip Rivers. I think those would be the 3. You could throw Todd Gurley in there, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But Rivers, he's been so good. And the defense of the Chargers, I think, is elite. Despite being ranked 13th, I think they get it back on track in the second half of the year. And this team last year, they had a terrible start to the year. And they didn't even make the playoffs. But they finished great. And the Chiefs are the opposite. They always start off to a hot start. This year they started 5-0. But what are they going to do? They're gonna come back down to earth. The rocket ship, it already landed in Mars. And it ain't going farther. It's going to come right back down, all the way back to Kansas City. But the Chargers, the sky's the limit for them. In the second half of the year, last year they were great. And the start of the year they were terrible. And this year in the start of the year, they've been great. Their record is 4-2. And they've lost to the Chiefs, who already said they could have easily won that game. If Bosa was healthy, if the receivers could catch passes, and talented receivers, by the way. If we talk about, Antonio Callaway, if he caught passes, the Browns would have won the game. But he has a history of drops. Tyrell Williams, Mike Williams, they don't necessarily have that history. And when Bosa gets back, Chargers are locked and loaded. I think they could easily represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Now let's go right down to number 3. The New England Patriots. You hate to see it, but they're 4-2. And Tom Brady's got this team back on track. Sony Michel, 316 yards in the last 3 games on the ground, with 4 touchdowns. Ever since Burkhead has gone on the IR, him and James White have been kind of like Kamara and Ingram from last year. Now, I won't say they were that good, but they remind me a lot of them. James White with all the passing duties, receiving out of the backfield, and doesn't really run the ball that much. But Sony Michel, he's a true ground warrior, and he doesn't catch the ball that much. So one thing Belichick could do that I'm seeing while watching these games, Sony Michel can catch the ball. I know he only had, I think it was 9 off the top of my head, receptions in his senior year at Georgia, but in his junior year, he was utilized in the passing game, and I believe, by watching the tape, he has a skill set to be a passing down running back, 3-down back. They can use him a little bit through the air, and they can use James White a little bit more on the ground just to confuse the defense. Because on most of the snaps that Sony Michel's in the game, he's getting a handoff up the middle. And teams are going to realize that. I know the Patriots, they have a pretty good offensive line. ninth best in the league. I have confidence that James White could do work as an actual runner as opposed to a pass catcher. And teams are they're gonna load the box with 8 guys in the box when Sony Michel's on the field, and when James White's on the field, they're gonna drop back into zone coverage. And this team, likewise with the Chargers, they've been slow starting team, so I'm not worried about the loss. Let's see, they lost to the Lions, and they lost to the Jaguars. Now the Jaguars game, that was not a good game for them. They couldn't stop Blake Bortles. And when you can't stop Blake Bortles, I don't really know who you're gonna stop. But they stopped Ryan Tannehill. They didn't stop Pat Mahomes, but really, who's stopping Pat Mahomes right now? They gave up 40, and they won. They won that game 43-40. That's why I have them slightly above the Chiefs. And because their defense is a little bit better than the Chiefs. I mean, they're ranked 21st as opposed to 32nd with Kansas City. The offense is ranked 13th. They're better than that. Tom Brady, he's Tom Brady. And he has his weapons back. Edelman returning from a suspension from the PEDs. Josh Gordon acquired in a trade from Cleveland. And Gordon, man, I think they got a steal there because they're trying to get him more involved, and he has the talent. Last week they took a deep shot, and took a pass interference for Josh Gordon not to catch that ball. I think Josh Gordon was a great addition to this team. I'm looking at Sony Michel, James White, Julian Edelman, Rob Gronkowski, who we haven't even talked about. I'm looking at Josh Gordon, Chris Hogan even. Brady has so many weapons for him. And if they don't make the Super Bowl, it's going to be a disappointing year. And I think it will impact Tom Brady's legacy if the Patriots are not representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Moving on. Number 2. Call me a homer, but I got the Saints. They're 4-1. Third best offense in the league. And the defense? Everyone thinks they're awful, but they're 18th. And most of the damage was done in the first few weeks. They gave 48 to the Buccaneers, but then only 18 to the Browns, 37 to the Falcons. They're scoring a lot of points. They stopped the Giants. They stopped the Redskins. The defense last year, that was a talk for them. Defense and running game, that was a surprise element for the Saints last year. Because before, last few years, it's been Breeze airing it out 40, 50 times in a game, having to win it for them. Because the defense couldn't stop anyone. They couldn't really run the football as well. And they have the 5th best offensive line. And they're the best defense against the run. Who knew that? Now, I know that's a little bit of game script. New Orleans, they score a lot of points. 36 points per game, most in the league. So teams are going to have to throw it. They're not going to be able to run as much. But still, the best run defense in the league. And the only issue has been through the air. But with Lattimore, with P.J. Williams and Marcus Williams, yeah, I know we like to tease Marcus Williams. But he was an all-rookie team at safety last year. But just one play ruined his perception around the football community. And he's a great young safety out of Washington. So, if the pass defense can improve, the Saints are looking real nice. Drew Brees, there's no denying how good he is. He's just so good. Most passing yards in NFL history. He's one away from 500 touchdowns. He will get against Baltimore. He has the record for best completion percentage in a full season. 72, I know. Cousins has 72 right now. Or 71, actually. Cousins is accurate too. But Drew Brees, the king of accuracy. As a quarterback, if you're accurate and you get the ball to your receivers and you allow them to make plays, you're doing your job as a quarterback. And he can air it out. He doesn't throw interceptions. So Drew Brees, we all know he's great. Ted Ginn on the IR, though. They drafted Traquan Smith out of UCF to eventually replace Ted Ginn as the deep ball receiver. And he did that. He had a great game against Washington. He had He had 3 receptions, only 3 receptions, but that's what he's going to do. He's going to give you the deep plays, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the one that got Drew Brees the record. I mean, what a great play that was. I mean, it didn't look like the Redskins was playing any defense, but it doesn't matter because it was a memorable way for Drew Brees to break the record on Monday night in such fashion of a deep touchdown pass to a rookie. So I think Tre'Quan Smith is going to be the main beneficiary, if you want to put it that way. He's going to receive more volume, and he's going to get the deep shots like Ted Ginn would. And in the offseason, they signed Cam Meredith, a talented wide receiver that had a great year with Chicago, then a gruesome ACL tear. I mean, there's so many of those these days. It's very unfortunate. So many ACL tears do occur. But it occurred for Cam Meredith. I think he will find a way to be more involved in the offense, especially with the injury to Ted Ginn. And let's see. What else is there for this New Orleans team? Oh, that kid, Alvin Kamara out of Tennessee. Phenomenal. I mean, I believe it was 7.8 yards per touch last year. I mean, his efficiency metrics are off the charts. When you watch him, you think he's a top 5 running back in this game. And he can run it through the tackles even. Like, with the Ingram suspension. I don't really think they'd use Kamara through the tackles too much because that's not really how he's built. You know, he's a smaller guy, more built as an explosive speed guy on the outside, the perimeter. But he got that inside running game work, and he took advantage. He was excellent. He was on fire when Mark Ingram was out. Last week they did limit Alvin Kamara with the return of Mark Ingram. You know, joined Julian Edelman with the PED suspension. But Kamara's volume will definitely go up in the next few weeks. They just tried to use Ingram, you know, in front of the home crowd. You got him back off the suspension. Everyone's excited to see him, how he returns. And Kamara, I'll be honest, he needed the return of Ingram because, like I said, not really built as an inside runner. He kind of had some injuries, and it's good for him to return to a normal workload because his workload did really increase with the absence of Ingram. But the Saints, through the air, on the ground, the offensive line, the run defense, like the Chiefs, if they can improve the pass defense, they're a scary team in the NFC. Moving down to number 1, though, we got the Rams. They're 6-0, the only undefeated team in football. They have the number 1 offense. They have the best offensive line. They have the second best pass rush. Todd Gurley leads the league in rushing. They're great. What can I say? Did anyone really think the Rams wouldn't be at number 1? Like I said, I am a Saints fan, and I tried to not have that affect my choice. I don't think it really did. I think the Saints are the second best team in the league. But there's no way I was putting anyone else but the Rams here at number 1. They play defense. 11th best defense. You see a lot of these teams on this list not really as good on the defensive end. But the Rams, they show up. They signed Marcus Peters in the offseason, although he has been atrocious. I mean, he's giving up yards. A lot of yards. And that's really their main weakness. It's giving up yards through the air. But besides that, they're a near-perfect football team. I mean, best offensive line. Todd Gurley, arguably the best running back in football right now. They're winning the battle of the line of scrimmage. And that is key. That is so key. That is so underestimated in today's game. Everyone thinks, oh, if you have the best quarterback, you know, you'll get the most yards and you'll win the games. If you have Pat Mahomes, you know, all these quarterbacks throwing a lot of touchdowns, you know. That's not what it's about. The offensive line, the defensive line are 2 huge elements, and they're first and second in those categories. Now, Cooper Kupp, you know, star wide receiver, he's been so good this year in his second year, but he sprained his MCL and he'll be out for a few weeks. It was pretty gruesome of injury. But in the meantime, it's going to be Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Josh Reynolds, getting all the work through the air. I mean, still, even with Kupp out, it's just all these weapons Jared Goff has. I haven't even talked about Jared Goff. And he's an MVP candidate. Maybe the front runner. No, Mahomes is the front runner. But arguably second, Gurley has been amazing. I mean, he completely gashed the Denver defense on the ground last week in the cold weather. Sean McVay coming over last year, leading an atrocious Rams team into a playoff team, a team that really should have gone deep in the NFC race. They just had a bad game against Atlanta in the first round, and they got bounced. But we were all thinking Jared Goff, oh, he's a bust, after his rookie year. But if you look at the coaching, who's his coach? Oh, Jeff Fisher. Yeah. No one has looked good when they've been coached by Jeff Fisher. Todd Gurley has looked awful when coached by Jeff Fisher. Jared Goff, terrible. I mean, Jeff Fisher might be the worst coach in NFL history. Not gonna lie. It's ugly when he's the head coach of your football team. But Sean McVay, an offensive mind who's just completely saved this franchise. And he's such a good coach. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the video of him with his memory, could remember just random plays from years ago when he was with the Redskins. I mean, unbelievable. This guy, Sean McVay, he's one of the best in the business already, only in his second year as the Rams head coach, and he'll be around for a while. I mean, there's no secret there. He's an excellent coach and deserves so much credit for the growth of this Los Angeles Rams team. And does anyone else feel like the Rams have unlimited cap space? Because in the offseason, I mean, they signed Ndamukong Suh, they signed Marcus Peters, Brandon Cooks, all to giant deals. Like, I don't know where they're pulling this money from. But I mean, this Rams team, easily the best roster on paper, I'd say. I mean, coming into the season, we saw the team, the roster, but we just wondered, would it work together? Would they gel? Would it fit? Would the chemistry be there? And it has been there. And that is why the Rams are your number one team in my personal NFL power rankings. So that was today's show. Let's just recap it real quickly. Number 10, Packers. Number 9, Steelers. Number 8, Ravens. Eagles. Vikings. Chiefs at 5. Los Angeles Chargers. I was about to say San Diego again. Number 3, Patriots. 2, Saints. Number 1, the Los Angeles Rams. In my opinion, those are the top 10 teams heading into Week 7 of the NFL season. I hope you guys enjoyed. That was a very fun one to make. And I've been posting a lot more content on the Into Sports channel. So if you'd like to see all the content right when it comes out, make sure to subscribe to Into Sports. And I'm out. Peace.